The sun was sinking behind the broken ridge when she stirred beneath the rotting trough, the light bleeding across the desert like a slow wound. Wind dragged dust in spirals around her boots, whispering through the empty frames of buildings that still clung to the outskirts of the forgotten town. She woke hungry, but hunger was a companion she had long learned to ignore. What pressed harder was the feeling that the world was moving on without her, like a river sliding past a stone. Hoofbeats disturbed the stillness. She didn't move. She barely breathed. A figure rode in from the west, a silhouette carved against a melting sun. His outline was massive, more a creature of the mountain than a man. Furs draped his shoulders. The bow of a rifle rose behind him like a second spine. When he halted, the horse exhaled steam into the cooling air. He looked at her quietly, not with pity or disgust, but with the unsettling curiosity of a man studying an omen. She wondered what he saw, a thin girl in ragged canvas, knife hidden in her boot, eyes too old for her years. She met his gaze because looking away had never saved her before. He dismounted, boots landing with a thud heavy enough to shift the dust. The leather creaked as he approached. He set a small strip of jerky on a stone between them, followed by a tin cup of water. The offerings felt more like a test than kindness. She didn't touch them. "What do you want?" His voice was rough stone. "Company. Nobody comes this far out for company." He seemed to wait her answer, then crouched so they were near eye level. The fire-hardened calm in his expression was more threatening than any weapon he carried. "Can I buy you?" he asked. Her hand slid toward the knife in her boot before she could stop it. "I'm not for sale." "I don't mean your body," he said, unflinching. "I want something simple. Someone who won't lie to me. Someone who will speak straight, even when the truth burns." She stared at him, uncertain how to measure a man who spoke like that. Those around here sold anything, morals, trust, even stolen prayers, but honesty? That was rarer than rain. "You're willing to pay for that?" she asked. He reached into his coat and dropped the leather pouch between them. It hit the ground with the weight of promise and peril. Silver clinked inside, more than she had held in years. "That all for truth," she muttered. "For yours," he said. Something about his certainty unsettled her. She'd been taken for desperate before, but never for honest. Still, she had nothing but the knife, the clothes on her back, and a life so thin it nearly vanished when she exhaled. She could leave the coins where they lay. She could run before he changed his mind. But his eyes held a loneliness sharper than hunger, and she saw no deception lurking behind them, only a heavy, quiet desperation. She nudged the pouch toward him with her toe. "Truth costs more than coin. Tell me the price." "You won't like it." He stood, slung his rifle over one shoulder, and said, "I'm not looking for comfort, just truth." His stubbornness irritated her and intrigued her. After a moment, she picked up the pouch, not because she trusted him, but because something in her chest tightened at the idea of walking away. "Fine," she said. "You want honesty? Then you listen when I speak, even if you hate what you hear." "I will." He led his horse toward the foothills. She followed, though every instinct told her to keep distance. As they traveled, the barren land slowly gave way to whispers of pine, the air growing cooler, dense with the smell of sap. Dusk deepened into a velvet blue night. They settled near a creek that murmured over smooth stones. He built a fire with practiced ease, sparks spiraling up like fireflies. She sat across from him, legs drawn tight, studying the man who had purchased her truth. "Why me?" she asked. "You didn't beg when you saw me," he said. "Didn't flinch. Didn't ask what I carried or what I give. Most folks try to shape themselves to what they think I want. You stayed exactly who you are. That's supposed to be a compliment? It's the closest I give." The flames cast shadows across his face, revealing deep lines carved not just by age but by guilt and grief. He watched the fire too intently, as if confessing to it. When she spoke, he listened with a focus that felt almost dangerous. They ate in silence, each lost in separate storms. When the wind shifted, she noticed a tension ripple through him. He lifted his head, listening. The horse pawed the ground nervously. "What is it?" she whispered. "We're not alone." Her chest tightened. She eased her hand toward her knife. Someone followed us, he murmured. Since town. How do you know? Lantern. Far off. Swinging slow. Whoever carries it knows how to track. Her stomach dropped. She'd had no time to question why a man like him traveled alone, why he looked over his shoulder more often than forward. Now the answer rose like frost along her spine. You bring trouble to everyone you meet? She asked. I try not to meet anyone, he said. But trouble finds me anyway. The lantern glow flickered faintly through the trees, distant but deliberate. No ordinary traveler moved like that. She crouched lower, heart thudding. You running from someone? She asked. He didn't answer right away. The silence itself was an admission. I won't let them touch you, he finally said. You have my word. That's supposed to comfort me? She whispered. No, it's just the truth. Despite herself, she almost smiled at the irony. He had paid her for honesty, yet he was the one offering it freely now. The lantern's movement paused, then dimmed as though whoever carried it was waiting, watching, choosing their moment. She slid closer to the fire, warmth licking her trembling hands. She didn't know this man, not truly, but something his vow felt solid, like stone beneath shifting sand. What happens next? She asked. He lifted the rifle onto his lap. Before morning, we find out whether truth costs more than we bargained. The creek murmured. The fire whispered. Somewhere in the trees, a lantern swung like a silent threat. The night pressed close around them, and neither moved. The wind held its breath. And for the first time in a long while, she felt the dangerous spark of a story she hadn't lived yet, one that might swallow her whole. Dawn seeped into the trees like pale smoke, thinning the darkness but not the danger that clung to the clearing. She had slept only in scattered fragments, every crack of a twig sharpening her nerves. The mountain man hadn't slept at all. He sat with his back to a pine, rifle balanced across his knees, eyes fixed on whatever memory haunted him more than the stranger with the lantern. When the first bird stirred, the rider emerged from the mists, black coat, brim low, lantern extinguished now that he'd found his mark. The man's presence warped the air. Even the forest seemed to recoil. The girl rose slowly, knife hidden but ready. Her heart beat a measured drum against her ribs. You led me far, the rider said, voice smooth as cold iron. Didn't expect you to run into the hills like a wounded wolf. The mountain man answered with an unblinking stare. Not running, just choosing where to stand. The girl watched the exchange, struck by the steadiness in him, a steady that felt earned through fire and ruin. She sensed history between them, thick and bitter, something older than last night's chase. You owe a reckoning, the rider continued. You burned what wasn't yours and walked away, leaving my men starving in the dead of winter. They were holding a family hostage, the mountain man replied. I freed them. You stole them, the rider hissed. And you cost us everything. The truth cracked open then. He hadn't been followed by accident. He'd been hunted. She looked from one man to the other, her own role shifting beneath her like loose gravel. He hadn't bought her truth out of eccentricity. He had needed someone untouched by his past, someone who could see him without the weight of accusation. What do you want with him? She asked before she could think better of it. The rider's gaze slid toward her, slow and assessing. His death will do. The mountain man's jaw tightened, but he didn't raise the rifle. Let her walk away. She's not part of this. She is now. Before she could react, more movement stirred behind them. A second gunman stepped from the undergrowth, pistol drawn. Her muscles reacted faster than fear. She ducked, rolled, and the bullet tore through bark where her head had been. The crack of the shot split the morning like a blade. The mountain man fired once, a clean, brutal arc of motion. The second gunman staggered back with a cry, collapsing but still breathing. It wasn't enough to stop him entirely, but it bought them seconds, thin, precious seconds. Run. The mountain man warned her. She ignored him, scanning the ground, searching for an angle. She didn't know these men, but she knew conflict, knew predators. No matter where she fled, they'd find her again. Running only invited the bullet to her spine. I'm not leaving, she said. A muscle in his cheek twitched, but he didn't argue. The rider dismounted with grace, unsettling for such a tall man. His boots barely disturbed the frost. "You always were sentimental," he said. "Thought you could save the world one family at a time." The mountain man raised his rifle. "Not the world, just the ones who deserve saving." Their standoff crackled with tension that felt older than the mountains themselves. She sensed the truth behind his words. Not heroism, not pride, but grief sharpened into purpose. He'd lost something once, something he feared losing again, and it made him dangerous in a way the rider couldn't predict. The injured gunman groaned on the ground, reaching for his dropped weapon. She moved before he could level it, kicking it out of reach. His hand clawed toward her boot, desperate. She brought her knife down, not to kill him, but to bury the blade deep into the dirt millimeters from his fingers. The message was clear. He pulled back, breath shaking. She turned, ready to face the rider again, but the mountain man was already shifting. Snow began falling. Light at first, then heavier, turning the world into a whirl of cold white feathers. Visibility faded. The rider raised his lantern, the flame crackling to life, casting a sickly glow that turned the snow into drifting ash. "This ends in the pass," the rider said. "Move." They were forced uphill, the storm tightening around them like a trap. The mountain man stayed close to her, guiding her footing on the slick rock. The rider followed several paces behind, gun drawn, lantern swinging like a snare. Every breath she took felt sharper, colder. She could hear the mountain man's breathing, too, steady, controlled, despite the exhaustion creeping into his steps. When they reached a narrow ledge overlooking a ravine, the storm howled with sudden violence. "Stop," the rider ordered. The mountain man stopped, but she did not. She stepped in front of him before she even realized her feet were moving. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was a stubbornness that matched his own. Maybe the truth he bought from her had bought something back. Respect, empathy, a fragile bond forged in danger. "You want him dead?" she said, voice carrying through the storm. "Then say why. Say it without hiding behind vengeance, like a coward." The rider's expression fractured, surprise, fury, disbelief all warring beneath his brim. "He betrayed us." "He saved people," she countered. "You're hunting him for having more conscience than you." Her words hit like a thrown stone. The rider raised his pistol, thrown off balance for a fraction of a heartbeat. A fraction was enough. The mountain man lunged, and the two men crashed against the edge of the pass. The lantern smashed, flames extinguishing against the snow. She rushed forward, heart hammering, barely seeing through the white swirl. The three of them struggled, boots scraping, fists striking, breath steaming like smoke. A final shove, a raw, desperate surge of strength, and the rider stumbled, arms swinging for balance that wasn't there. His eyes met hers for an instant, cold and furious, before the abyss swallowed him silently. The storm eased as if satisfied. For a long moment, none of them spoke. The mountain man stood bent over, hands braced on his knees, breath ragged. She moved to his side, steadying him without thinking. The heat of his shoulders seeped through her cold fingers. "He would have killed you," he murmured. "And he almost did, but we're still standing." He straightened, studying her with a look that carried gratitude, exhaustion, and something quieter beneath. He reached into his coat and pulled out the pouch of silver, pressing it toward her. "You earned every coin," he said. "Truth like yours is rare." She closed his hand around it and pushed it back. "Keep it. Buy yourself a life where men like him can't follow." His gaze lingered on her, searching for the lie. He found none. The storm thinned until the sky showed hints of pale blue. The world below the pass waited. Valleys, forests, whatever future stretched beyond their bruised shadows. She stepped beside him. He adjusted his coat. They began descending the mountain together. Two shapes moving into a landscape neither yet understood, bound not by debt or fear, but by the strange, undeniable truth they'd built between them. And neither looked back at the abyss behind them,